Welcome back to the homestead, the mobile homestead, if you will. We've gotten a lot of questions about the solar system on our camper, what it will do, what it won't do, what did it cost, So we thought we would just, instead of answering each one individually, we thought maybe we'd just spend some time, just do a review of the system, talk about the cost, talk about what it can and can't do, and talk about what you could do, on a different budget, if you will, depending on what you're trying to do. So a recap of this system: we have the Multi Plus 3000 watt 24 volt inverter. We have 6 100 amp hour 12 volt Battle-Born lithium batteries wired for 3 strings at 24 volts. We have a Midnite Solar Mini DC for all of our breakers and wire connections. We have a Smart Solar MPPT 150 35, which is 150 volt input, 35 amp charge controller. We have the Victron Orion DC to DC converter, which takes this 24 volts and makes 12 volts for the camper with no 12 volt house battery. So we removed the house battery, we removed all of that, the converter, everything runs off to 24 volts. Around the corner, you guys don't need to see it, but there's a little Midnite Solar quad box for the 12 volt system, for the auto level, the electric brakes, and the camper itself. The one thing we did add to this was the VE Bus Smart dongle. And what this does, that actually converts, it doesn't convert, it takes the CAN bus from the Victron inverter and makes Bluetooth. So the Smart Solar talks Bluetooth. Now this has Bluetooth. The two can talk together, share information like battery temperature, everything else. There is a color GX in the camper that you've seen in other videos. We'll try to leave a picture right here maybe. That is the kind of the brains, if you will. The one unique thing about the Victron that I will say is a little cumbersome for me initially, but once you set a system up, you don't really need to monkey with it. So things like shore power current limit, this will do assist. So like, for example, here at our friend's house, we're plugged into a 15 amp receptacle. We have shore power set for 10 amps. So when the air conditioner comes on, it draws some out of the batteries, some from his power, and then when the air conditioner shuts off, it tops the batteries back off. That setting is inside on the Color GX. The core programming isn't available on the Color GX. It is not available through Bluetooth. So then you get into these things here, which this is a MK3 to USB. So this would actually plug in right where this does. I would unplug that CAN bus cable, plug this in. I can plug this right into my phone or my laptop. I can use either VE Direct or VE Connect. Connect has, I think it's Connect. I may be getting these terms wrong, but there is a programming software Victron offers. It's much more in depth. There's a cell phone app, which I believe is Victron Connect, and that does 90% of what you'd need to do, or probably 100% actually. We have not hooked a laptop up to this yet, but we did buy that to program the inverter. We do have a Victron battery monitor and shunt. I can't remember the actual model number. I have down here BMV 712, but I think that's because that's the one I would recommend. Ours is the older version that does not have Bluetooth. So in order to program it or update the firmware in it, you have to get another VE Direct to USB. So this is the VE Direct. So Victron uses, I think, 3 different connectors and protocols to talk around their system. If I was starting from scratch, I would use the, I think it's a Serbo GX, where all these different things plug into it and it sets right in here, and then it talks Bluetooth to a touchscreen display. I think that costs you about $100 more than the Color GX display we have that has to be hardwired. The problem with the Color GX is everything has to wire back to it. So it's up in the camper, and the charge controller has to wire back to it. The battery monitor shunt has to wire back to it. The inverter has to wire back to it. So all those things have their own cables going up there, which isn't a big deal. It adds a little bit of complexity. We did go with the Victron mostly just because we wanted a across-the-board brand. We wanted everything to match, we wanted everything to work together. We knew we wanted lithium, and Victron kind of leads that market, if you will, in the RV market, in my opinion. When everything combined together, they have the versatility of the charge controllers and the displays and everything else that companies like Magnum just don't have. Magnum makes a good inverter, but it's an inverter. Battleborn, we chose Battleborn because we paid for these out of our own pocket, and at the time I wanted to go with a very reputable company. There's a lot of Chinese stuff out there. If you're doing this on your own, you can go watch Will Prowse on YouTube. He does reviews of all of these inexpensive lithium batteries coming out of China. He'll tell you the goods and the bads of all of them. There's a lot of different batteries now available that are a lot less expensive. An example is we spent somewhere around $800 a piece on these batteries, and I believe right now you can get some pretty decent looking quality ones for $250 a piece, but you don't have somebody to call, right? I mean, you're on your own. Like right now I could pick up the phone and call Battleborn, maybe not today, it's Saturday, but I could call them. They understand the Victron products, they would work with me. I have reached out to their tech support several times because they have a calculation for absorb time, and I reached out to them and explained what I was doing, how I was using it. They told me what to use for absorb time, so they've always been helpful that way.
They were not with tracking, however, on these batteries. They were absolutely wretched to deal with buying these.
So on the Battleborns, Sue did have a lot of trouble with them when it came to the tracking information in the beginning. I don't know what took place there. They've been pretty responsive with me on tech support, so your mileage may vary. SOK is another brand that's up and coming. They're a Chinese company. They have probably middle of the road when it comes to price on the lithium. And at the end of the day, they're all using, well, I shouldn't say they're all using, most of them are using all the same cells inside. The BMS is really where the money is, and you want to make sure you're getting something with a quality BMS that does, under temperature shutdown, over temperature shutdown, and all of that. After that, you're, like I said, your mileage may vary. If you're looking to save some money and you're looking to experiment a little yourself, some of the Chinese stuff off Amazon, from what I could see from watching Will Prowse, seems to be real decent quality. So, again, we went with this because we were throwing a lot of money at this, and it was a reputable brand name. I know some of their employees from being in the industry and going to the shows. I just felt like it was a name that if I had a problem, I could probably get some resolution. Whereas if I buy, Happy For You lithium batteries off Amazon, I'm probably not getting any resolution if I have a problem. So anyways, long and short is, how much did this cost? This is probably the primary question we get. The inverter, street price, $1,300. The color GX that we have inside, it controls everything, street price, a little over $500. The battery monitor kit from Victron, Bluetooth with the shunt, $200. Adapters, the different adapters we have here, probably $75. The Smart Solar MPPT, street price is $325. The DC to DC converter is $110. We did buy a spare because that does power everything, 12 volt slides and everything. So if that ever failed and we were out camping, we would have to hotwire 12 volts somehow to get the slides in. So we just felt the spare was worthy. The batteries, we paid about $800 a piece, so there's about $4,800 in batteries sitting there. The mini DC was $270. The quad box was $68. We have two 340 watt modules on the roof. That's about $550 with mounting. And then miscellaneous wire, cables, breakers, we figure about another $400. So all in, we're somewhere around $8,700 in this solar system on the camper. And that's a lot of money. When you look at it, that is a lot of money. But the things that it does allow us to do, like boondock in a Cabela's or a Walmart parking lot, or being like here and connected to a 15 amp receptacle, still be able to run air conditioning and have everything we want. We felt that was worth it. We don't know as it will ever technically pay for itself, but then again, does the camper pay for itself? So, the whole purpose of this is to go out and have a little fun, see a little bit of the country, and this really adds to that. You know, if we can get out west and we get into BLM land, we can boondock. You know, we can probably run 6 to 7 days on our tanks. So the solar system is going to allow us to do that too. We can run the air conditioning a little bit. We have to be careful because we do only have 700 watts of solar, but we have a lot of battery. So we can run for a long time on battery, but we do also have a small little suitcase inverter generator that we can use to charge back up as well. So essentially, an overcap of this is we have roughly 7.5 kilowatt hours of usable energy in the lithium. What can you do if you've got a camper and you want to do some stuff? The big money really is in the batteries. And if you really want a big system, lead acid is so heavy that this is probably going to pay for itself just in weight reduction. This camper had one roughly 85 amp hour lead acid battery in it, probably weighed 55-60 pounds. If I was going to go put batteries in here, I'd use probably an AGM and something like a sun extender maybe. You're probably going to be 100 amp hour battery is probably going to be about 75 pounds, and 100 amp hour lithium versus 100 amp hour AGM, you automatically get double the amount of power, usable power, out of this battery than you do the AGM. But I think you even get a little bit more than that, because you know, you can take an AGM to 50%, but I think that they, as they age in the first year or so, that number is a lot different, whereas the lithium is pretty consistent across the board on how much you can pull out of it until it's worn out. So if you're doing any kind of a size system, like if you really want to be able to boondock and do things like run the microwave and stuff like that, you're probably going to want to look into a lithium battery. If you are just trying to maybe run the refrigerator on AC while you're driving down the road, or a couple of little things, or just maybe be able to run your laptop and your cell phone overnight in a Walmart parking lot, then maybe leaving your AGM in there, adding another one or something may make sense. You have to decide when you're doing this a couple different things. You have to decide how much of the stuff in the camper do I want to power. So you could actually break out some circuits in your electrical panel and put them on the inverter and leave the rest around the inverter right under shore power. You have to decide how long you want to be able to run these items, and then you can start sizing the system just like you would a residential system. In our case, we backed up the whole camper, so the circuit literally goes from the shore power into the inverter and right into the camper. So our whole camper is on this system, and with this much lithium, we don't have any issues. I mean, not that we would run the air conditioning all night boondocking or anything, but that's kind of where we're at with that. You have to decide how much solar you can actually fit on the camper. Do you even want solar, or are you just going to commit to running a generator every now and then and charging the batteries when it's convenient for you and still go boondocking? Those are the kind of things that you have to look at and decide what can you even do. In our case, it's a 30-foot fifth wheel, but there's so much stuff on the roof that we would have been hard-pressed to get more than maybe 3 modules up there. We put 2 up because our goal was really to keep things going while we're traveling. So we travel 5 or 6 hours a day. We wanted to be able to have the refrigerator on AC while we travel. We wanted to be able to get to a Cabela's, plug our cell phones in, maybe check our email, watch a little TV for the night, things like that. And we can do that all easy. If the sun's not out for 2 or 3 days, we may have to fire up the generator, but in general, you know, that works really well. So yeah, that's kind of a recap of some of the questions. Would we do anything different if we did it again? I don't think so. I think we're really happy with the system. The one thing I might do different if I was doing it again, and I'm not sure, I might have put a piece of plywood vertical and mounted the inverter vertical instead of laying it down, and I could have had some more storage space here, but everything fits really well, and we have a ton of storage back in the belly of the fifth wheel. So I don't think we would do anything different. Each string goes back to its own breaker in here and combines the battery strings, so each one has its own overcurrent protection. So yeah, I think you know, that kind of covers the solar system. I'm looking through my little notes here, my cheating notes. Oh yeah, one of the other questions that we got a lot was 24 volts. Why did we go 24 volts? Well, in our case, it was because somebody gave us the inverter. A friend of ours here in Florida actually had the inverter, brand new in a box, and he wasn't using it. And he said, if you want it, you can have it. Put it in your camper. So that was kind of the driving factor of why 24 volts. But now that we've done it, I don't think I would do 12 volts. That's a lot of batteries in parallel. It's a lot of amps going to the inverter. When you drop it down to 24 volts, you cut that amperage in half. And the DC to DC converter works really well. You know, like I said, it's 110 bucks. We bought two, so we got $220 in it, and we have a spare. So I think if I was doing this, and if you were doing it, if I was recommending to you, I would go 24 volts as well if you're going to do any size on the system. Again, if your goal is really just to have a small inverter that will run the TV and your cell phone and stuff like that, not the air conditioning and whatnot, then maybe 12 volts makes sense because you can tap it into the existing battery. You can leave the converter in place if you wanted. There's a lot of different things you can do. But if you're trying to do something that basically allows you to run 4, 5, 6 days off grid, you know, if you want to go out to BLM land or boondock or something like that, I think 24 volts makes a lot of sense. So I don't know, hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, we've gotten some questions. We'll obviously answer any that we can. We work in this industry. We are licensed electricians, so you know, we have a little bit of background in this. So if you got any questions, you know, go ahead and leave them below. If you're thinking about doing this and you're curious, like, you know, what would we recommend, or what, you know, if you want just a sanity check, you know, go ahead and reach out to us. We can look it over with you. We can make some suggestions. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that helps you understand roughly, you know, what we've got invested in this, and or what we would have invested if we bought everything right off the internet, and you know, what it can do, what it can't do. You know, another example, you heard me say earlier that the batteries have about 7.5 kilowatt hours of usable energy. The air conditioning in this camper draws about 1.2 kilowatts when it's running. So if you ran the air conditioner 100% steady, you could run it for about 5 to 6 hours, if that's the only thing running. Now, an air conditioner doesn't run steady. The compressor cycles off and on. There's a duty cycle to it. The one thing we found like that, we stayed in Connecticut, I believe it was, one night when it was like 90 degrees. We ran the air conditioner actually with the windows open because it cooled down in the evening. So when we got ready to go to bed, we turned the air conditioner on like 75. And it ran for like 30 minutes, and then as the night went on, it really never ran anymore because the windows were open and it cooled off in the camper. But it cycled a couple times early on, and we still had, you know, 80-something% of battery in the next morning. So you learn a few tricks how to you know, maximize your batteries and minimize your usage, just kind of like you do when you live off grid. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.